I'm very happy today because I have a chance to be out of the studio and I'm doing something actually in the sort of rehearsal space, the artist space at the back of STUK, of all places. If you don't know that, it's in Maribor, it's a student union. And here I'm sitting next to a gentleman from North London called Darren. Welcome.
Hello.
But Darren, you do strange and wonderful things. You're not here just for fun, are you? You're actually a kind of pretty hip-hop and beatbox and clever, technical, whizzy performer with the name of Beardyman.
Everything you said is pretty much true.
Why? How did it start? Where did all that come from?
I was making weird noises when I was a kid, and I never really stopped.
We all make weird noises.
Well, yeah. Actually, it's funny because I've got a kid, and he's like 15 months old, and he started to mimic noises of engines and fans and motors before he's really started to talk. He's always keen, like when he'll point at like a fan or something, and he'll start mimicking the noise, and I'm like, that's a fan. He just ignores the word, and he's like this. So it's funny. I've kind of got this theory that kind of the origin of language is somewhat onomatopoeic, and I think
a
that
big word
proves
for
it.
Slovenia, but fine, yes.
Yeah, well, derived from the imitation of noises.
Absolutely, I'm sure that's true. And you know, how do we learn things? We do learn by hearing sounds, and
I think it's a means of expression that we've kind of lost a bit, because there's this kind of language chauvinism where we're sort of told to stop making that weird noise, you know, but actually that weird noise might be very expressive and able to communicate something, you know, hand gestures, body language, and noises, you know. And you go see a comedian, and often they will include noises as part of their set, and it's an aspect of storytelling, and it helps you to communicate.
Dogs do it all the time.
Do they?
Yeah, they make funny noises and sniff one another.
They do. I've never heard a dog mimicking, but mimicry in the animal kingdom is actually very common. Sound mimicry, not so much, but mimicry is everywhere. But in terms of sound mimicry, lots of birds will do it. And there's one called the lyrebird, which I did a documentary about for Radio 4 in England.
Wow.
Which was it's really interesting because this bird is very unique, and it can mimic the sound of absolutely anything. If you look up the lyrebird, Lyre, fascinating bird, and no one really knows how or why it does it. They know sort of how it does it physically. It's got these kind of two throats, which all birds have, and it kind of cross modulates between them, which is nuts. But no one knows why. It's kind of a mating ritual, but like all kind of, you know, sort of genetic fitness displays in mating rituals, it serves no other purpose than to show that the genes are functioning well, like a sort of peacock's tail or something like that. At least we think. But it does practice, and it does kind of.
Sure.
It's mental. It's absolutely amazing. But yeah.
You're here today, obviously, to do a gig. You're going to entertain the troops out there.
I am.
Is that great fun to you? Is this something you really like to do?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to get a job, would I? I mean, it's, you know, I always figured like a job is something you're sort of forced to do out of necessity, but I've managed somehow to engineer the circumstances whereby I don't need one to survive, which is, it's a rare thing to be able to. You know, there's that phrase, isn't it? Find a job you love, you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah.
So I think I've done that. I think if you can call this a job, that is.
Well, you earn money doing it. It's a job.
Oh yeah.
That'll do.
Yeah.
What about music? I asked you to choose bits of music. I don't expect you've done any choosing yet because you've been busy and I was late and you had trouble with your flights and so on. So, what sort of music are we going to play that I mean, we're going to see some of your performance, which is fantastic. And you've given us the joy of being able to take some of that and put it in the show. So thank you very much for that.
No worries.
But what about other bits of music? What sort of stuff do you listen to? What influenced you when you were young?
Well,
not that you're not young now.
Is this the kind of thing where if I start talking about something, you're obliged to then play it? Because a lot of the music that I was like raised with was my parents' music taste, and bless them, they had some fairly mainstream taste for the time. So,
well, tell me what they did, but we won't play it.
Well, like, you know, they were always listening to the stuff that was, I mean, you know, Billy Joel, Michael Jackson, Electric Light Orchestra, you know.
So this was your upbringing, so you had to fight against that.
ABBA. But yeah, there was good stuff amongst there. They were heavily into the Beatles, so they were a big influence. Okay. So you can have a worse start than that.
Okay.
Bit of Stevie Wonder, that's always good. Bit of Lionel Richie, it's all right. You know, so there was some good stuff in there, and all those people, you know, Billy Joel and ABBA and stuff. It's amazingly well crafted, beautifully produced music. But I had to discover the good stuff from the 70s myself. You know, like all the underground stuff, and like.
So choose me a Beatles track to kick off with.
A Beatles track to kick off with. Let's think. Well, I don't know. Be good to play the whole of the second half of Abbey Road, but there's probably too much time for that. Not enough time for that.
Through the bathroom window and all of that.
All of that, yeah. Maybe just come together off Abbey Road because it's amazing.
Come Together, the Beatles. My guest today, the one and only Beardyman. Darren, I would like to know how. I mean, you say you made noises and so on, but did you kind of, 12 years old, start picking up, recording it and playing with it? Did you have a microphone in the house? I mean, was there something that led you to that at a very early age?
I don't know. It's sort of a weird sort of destiny in a way, I think, where I don't know, yeah, I always just was, there was a piano in the house and I started playing that, and then they got me piano lessons, and like my mum played guitar, I'd be playing that, and my brother's very musical, he does musical comedy, he's very, very smart and really funny, and yeah, my sister like learnt the piano in like a month. Wow. And then just didn't play anymore. She was like, and she did it and then did this little concert in school and then just never played anymore. I don't know, we're all quite musical, and like and a lot of us are show-offs, so I don't know, it always seemed like a sort of and I mean, so like aside from the stuff that my parents would play us that was like proper music, they also had, obviously you remember Kenny Everett.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
all in the best possible taste.
Exactly. So he was like, I guess he wasn't big in Slovenia, but he was a broadcaster of fine repute who was a nutter.
Yes,
just like,
and he made his own radio shows at home, basically, and brought them to work. Yes.
Yeah, it was a complete lunatic in the nicest possible way, in the best possible taste.
And he did sampling in an analog way. You know, he sampled things and played them in and repeated them and so on, without some of the technology which you access.
Well, yeah, it was all cutting tape and stuff, you know, as it was. But like, he had a segment on his show where he would play the worst record he could find, and then he made a compilation of that, and so my parents would play us that, and we were just, you know, we'd be in stitches laughing so hard playing these terrible songs over and over again. And you know, my mum also got us Spike Jones, as in not the director now, Spike Jones in the City Slickers, as in the geezer from the 40s and 50s, who was like a sort of well-renowned musical act, and then ended up being, he had his own show. And it's absolutely batshit mental. Just the craziest stuff you'll ever hear, where he would do parodies of songs of the time with a band, like a full orchestra, with people like Mel Blanc, who did the voice of Bugs Bunny and stuff like that, coming into these mental cameos. And the actual stage show itself, there were like dwarves and giants and people doing acrobatics, and he had a whole rack of insane instruments that he played, where he had like loads of cowbells and like guns. It was mental. Yeah. So like, we got played that as well. Yeah. And
I grew up with Sparky's Magic Piano.
Hey, that was good. Sparky's Magic Piano was good. I got that as well. Yeah.
Look it up, folks. You need to find that one on the internet.
Vocoding.
Yeah, absolutely. Heavy. Yes. Yeah. We've already got to another piece of music.
Right. Well, I don't know. That's what to play. I'll tell you what's amazing, and it's one of my favourite things ever. The track I'd like to play, I think, is Vessel by John Hopkins, which is on his 2009 album Insides, and it is amazing. And basically, you have to play this track until the end.
Let's ask some sensible questions, just for a moment. You went to school.
Unfortunately, yes.
And you went to primary school and secondary school. Did you enjoy any of that?
Primary school was all right. My secondary school was very strict and sort of draconian, and had all these weird rules about uniform and stuff, which are very standard school rules, really, aren't they? But I didn't like them. It was an all-boys school, and so
there were nasty people like prefects who would make you do horrible things.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it wasn't even that. It was more that, like, well, just everything about it, everything about how strict and rigid school can be when they impose sort of very arbitrary rules on you. Things like uniform, and I know that that's supposed to be there as a kind of leveler, but kids still find ways to differentiate themselves, and then those ways matter more. So in the same way that when you have, like, you know, full burqa imposed for women in some country, they will go all out on the eye makeup, or, you know, or the accoutrements to their bag and stuff. Same was true in my school. There were no public hangings.
You had special eye makeup.
Yeah, no. Well, no, you had to have like a certain brand of shoes. Kickers were the only shoes that were cool. So you had to have kickers. And if your parents wouldn't buy you kickers, then you just weren't very cool. Like, it's all these weird little things that really matter when you're like 13 years old and they make you wear a uniform. Anyway, it's stuff like that where it sends you a bit mad. Like, there was no girls around, so it becomes very like, you know, especially going through puberty and that, like, you're just discovering what it is to be, you know, a grown-up, you know, in every sense. And, like, I think it's weird and unnatural to separate the sexes like that and to enforce uniform and to... It's your fucking youth. Like, you're supposed to enjoy yourself. Learning is done better when it's engaging and it's interesting and it's fun. And, like, I don't know. Like, having a kid now, I'm really thinking about, you know, how do I want to have him... educated. I don't want to put him through that.
No.
Do you know what
I'll
I mean?
give you some answers after the interview.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
You can pop out and discover Rudolf Steiner.
No, I know all about Steiner schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll see if there's any near me.
Okay. Okay. So did you rebel against that? Education.
A little bit, not really. Like, sort of. I mean, I
You
wasn't.
do
like,
roll your trousers up when you shouldn't have, or do something. You know,
well, yeah,
worse.
we weren't allowed to wear any piece of clothing with a logo bigger than 2 postage stamps was the rule. So I would flout that and then get like a Saturday detention or something. And it's not really rebellion, is it? Like, I didn't
But
really
at the time, it probably felt like it.
Well, just yeah, I don't know. I didn't really rebel, you know, consciously. I wasn't like a sort of punk or anything. I was just, you know, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't like a bad kid. Like, I didn't get in too much trouble. Like,
Did you pass any exams?
yeah. Do you want to know what exam results
No,
I got?
not at all. But I mean,
I did all right. I did
just,
actually pretty good.
Some of the point of these discussions actually is to say to other people, you know, maybe because you're not the best student in the class, there are other things that you'll do which may actually be much more interesting, much more exciting, and like you say, you won't be feeling you're even doing a job.
I was good in school, like academically, I did well. But I would have done better if I wasn't constantly trying to skip school because it was so boring. You know, I don't know. I think exams are weird. They put a lot of pressure on. I don't think it's a coincidence that most adults have nightmares about exams.
No, absolutely.
You know,
even driving tests.
yeah, but you know, it's not the worst thing in the world to be educated. I think it's interesting now that like we have the ability to educate without the need for the sort of order that we needed to impose to get that stuff done. You know. That, like, you know, you can, if someone asks you why and you don't know the answer, you can just go on Wikipedia. There's no such thing as a know-it-all anymore. They don't exist.
Well, everybody does. Everybody knows.
Everyone can know it all because all the information's there. It's an amazing time to be alive.
Hopefully
schools will be banned.
I have a T-shirt which says, actually, I don't need Wikipedia. My wife knows everything. So, let's have another piece of music. Where are we going to go with music? And then I'm going to talk about the stuff you create.
Okay. This is the song that got me into dance music, electronic music. Before that, I was just into guitars and stuff. So, yeah, it's from 1997, Adam F. Colours.
Talking to a man like Beardyman, Darren, it's really necessary, I think, to start to talk about the actual sounds you produce and why. I mean, you've spoken about the very beginnings of how you were sort of lived in sound effects and sounds and so on. When did you first start to assemble that into something that we could call music? You already play the piano, you've told us that, and maybe a bit of guitar and so on. So when did this begin to be something which you could perform?
Well, I suppose I'd always made noises in that and always experimented with how to mimic things, but I'd never really given it any thought about how I could make it into like a set, let alone a career, until I heard Razel, who is amazing. And it's at about 2001, I think it was, he put out this album that set the template for what all beatboxers after that would be. Because there was a lot of people who could make noises who never gave a second thought to the idea that they would ever be able to have it be like even a pastime that people liked, let alone be a career. But he was so good at it, and he inspired so many people, and he set so many, he pushed the boundaries, and he did the singing and beatboxing at the same time thing, which no one had ever done before, really, or they'd never done it well. He would craft his sets so that he would kind of enter rather than sort of crowd hyping and being accessible, he would enter doing a very accurate impression of a robot, and it's otherworldly, you know, very kind of it's like a piece of performance art. But so engaging and all with this hip-hop sensibility. Basically, he was smashing parties all around New York and then all around the USA. And, you know, there weren't really beatbox battles then. You know, there were like b-boy battles and stuff like that. But through what he was doing, he managed to elevate what was already happening in terms of people like Kenny Mohammed and stuff like that. And, I mean, Michael Winslow, perhaps. Just people who were sort of pushing that art form. Well, and there's loads of people I've missed out there as well. But the beatbox story doesn't really solidify until you get to Razel. So, like a lot of other kids my age, he was the sole influence.
But beatbox worries me as a term simply because that tends to make everybody think of something specific, you know, the heavy, beaty kind of stuff, which most of it is. But you actually go much further than that. You do other things outside it in a way. I mean, appearing on the proms is interesting, because now you start creating not something from rock kind of sounds and bass guitars and all the rest of it. You start actually producing violins on the stage and basses and drum sounds and so on in a rather more classical way.
Well, it's all just showboating, really, isn't it? I mean, the thing about beatboxing for me is that you can use the human voice as a tool, and underlying that, there's this sort of idea that anything can be a component in a wider schema. You know, you can make a noise with your body, or you can sample something, or whatever. It doesn't matter what you're using, anything can become music. So my focus now is much more on what I can do with technology and sampling and using my intuition and sort of improvising in the moment and stuff like that, rather than mimicking sounds specifically. So yeah, like you say, I like to sort of expand the remit of what's possible with sort of live, spontaneous creativity.
And when you look at your performances, I mean, I have to admit, I haven't been to a performance, but I've seen many of them. Seattle is on YouTube and lots of other stuff is there. When you look at the performances, you kind of go, one thing that is extremely obvious to me is you're actually a pretty good musician with a good ear.
I think I've got a better ear than I have ability to produce what I hear in my head. But I've always wanted to remove the barriers between what I'm imagining and what I'm capable of producing. Because it's funny, if you have, you know, you can write a symphony in your head, and then getting that out there into the world takes time, and that's great because then you can have time to finesse the idea. But often in that finessing process, you can lose the initial feeling that you had that urged you to create the idea. And if, like me, your mind goes off in a lot of directions, without the ability to hone it back to what it originally was, or without the ability to sort of shut off the sort of the influences that you don't want in it, it's great to be able to get ideas out fast. You know, then you keep the original idea sort of very pure.
You say your mind goes off in lots of directions, but is your act like that? Because your act seems to, when I see it, it's never the same. There's something happens different, you react to the audience, you come up with some kind of concept. You also seem to be very able to write lyrics and make them almost rhyme. Well, you always say this one's not going to rhyme somewhere.
Right,
it's part of your trademark, it seems to be, to find a line that doesn't work. And
it's part of your trademark to suck at freestyle lyricism. No, there are freestyle MCs that I've worked with who are just amazing. Lean is one. He's a guy from the UK who's just insane. This guy Lean is the best freestyle lyricist maybe that has ever lived.
Really?
And he's like some sort of secret weapon that every so often I'll call him up and he'll be like, I've got a project, I need the best lyricist in the world, and he's like, well, that's me, when do we start? And he is amazing, because I've got some videos of me doing stuff with him. I did a thing a while back that was it was in the Jazz Cafe in London, which is a really nice place to do stuff. It's got a strong following, very intimate, and you know, they get interesting music stuff down there. So like, I did a thing with Disraeli, who is an amazing, not the Prime Minister, he's dead. He's not around. No, he's an MC who's absolutely incredible. Amazing sort of freewheeling, very sort of conscious sort of freestyle technique. and Lean, who is just a freestyle machine. He never falters. There's never filler. It is on point. It all rhymes. It sounds as if it's been written months beforehand. But he, like me, when he tries to write something with a lot of time to do it, he gets swamped by the options that his brain presents him, and nothing seems like the right thing. So it's like you have that time pressure, and suddenly you're forced to sort of find the right thing. I do the occasional thing where, like, it's just perfect, and I'm like, that was great, and then those end up being the things which I post up. But so there's always this kind of loose charm, if you want to call it that, about the things I do, where because it's improvised, not everything is completely neat. It's always a bit rough around the edges, and I like that. That's kind
of nice, isn't it? That's you.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that in the performances, and I like the rough around the edges. If it were perfect, it wouldn't be so much fun.
No, exactly. But I mean, doing that means that you're forced to kind of make light of it, or at least kind of embrace that looseness, which is something that I've needed to do less and less as I've been refining the technology behind what it is I do, and designing the technology behind what it is I do.
I need another piece of music.
Okay.
But I want to ask you another question about the performance.
Okay. Another piece of music. Okay.
Well, instead of choosing it, you've been kind enough to allow us to record the show. Let us take a piece out of the show. We'll do that twice. We'll end the programme with that as well. But let's take a piece out of the show. Goodness knows what you're going to do, because at this stage you probably don't really know.
No. Well, I hope it's good after all that hype.
What about that? People of Slovenia. Maybe you're not from Slovenia. Maybe you're from a neighboring country. Maybe that's okay. I'm just a cunt me. Don't know what I'm doing around here, but I don't want to sow fear. I just wanna sow seeds of happiness and get girls out of their dress and say, everyone say you know. We can go to go the flow. It's okay to be anywhere you want. I'm gonna eat in restaurants and I don't care aloud what is going on. Although maybe I do inside to tell, even if you were living in hell, heaven's around the corner and this is the way that you can tell. Say if your life is going okay, then there's a way to know. It's if you can get down with some fucking crazy flow. This is how the rhythm goes down to where I'm from. It's just a bit long. People of Maribor, say eh, say oh, say ha ha, say ah. Yeah, now shut up, cause I'm just gonna do this one more time and it's gonna be enough for ya. I adore ya. People in this place, I abhor the violence wherever I see it. If I see some peacefulness, I wanna be it. I wanna end violence wherever I see it. If I see some
performing, what is going through your head? Is it an automatic process, or are you in some emotional state, or what?
All sorts. You know, it's funny because you sort of traverse the mental landscape when you're doing something like what I do live, I suppose. You know, you're occasionally you're very consciously trying to find a preset or something, and occasionally you're just in another world while you're imagining images around a subject in order that you might find linking words to them, you know, to sort of, that's freestyle
and
technique
you imagine
theory.
whilst also doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you've done your 10,000 hours or whatever it is to be able to get the processes that can be automatic,
Yeah.
you know, if you basically reduced all the technical side of what your fingers are doing to nervous twitches, basically, then you're able to kind of think one step forward in time, or you're able to sort of look at yourself from outside yourself and gain a bit of perspective on what you're doing. And I tend to try and focus mostly on the overall structure of the set, in terms of, you know, the emotional trajectory that it's been on, and the texture of the music that I've been doing, and the
Reactions?
Oh, well, obviously that's like, whether the crowd is into it.
Yeah.
But there's a sense in which you need to ignore whether the crowd are into it at points, because you need to be enjoying it as the performer. Like, you need to... There's a guy called Reggie Watts, who I don't know if you know him, but he's a genius. He is one of the only other people doing this kind of thing that I know of, where he's like bringing stuff out of his subconscious, and he never does things where he tends not to do things where you take crowd suggestions and stuff like that.
Right.
He's more of like a shaman, and through him travels the energy of the universe. He's just amazing. Anyway, so like, he said to me once, because I made some passing comment, I was like, oh, it's funny, isn't it? You've always got to keep one eye on what the crowd want, you know. And he's like, no, you don't. Fuck them. It's not about what they want. And I thought that was crazy, because, you know, I have to think about whether the crowd are enjoying it, because this is for them, you know. But it's interesting to be able to take it from that perspective, and it's interesting that there can be that perspective, and that it can work so well for someone like Reggie. He's amusing himself, you know, and so long as he's enjoying it, they will. So I guess it's about, as a performer, if you go by that ethic, then you need to make sure that you're putting yourself in their position, at least, where you're thinking, you need to really be outside yourself looking in, to be experiencing what you're doing. It's very interesting, improv theory. I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by what can be automatic, and what can't. And you find that most things can be, and then
sometimes
you're just watching yourself do it.
Come off the stage thinking, wow, I generated something I didn't expect.
Oh, I never remember what I've done.
You don't remember?
No.
Interesting.
If I can remember what I've done, then maybe it wasn't the best gig. It's if you come off stage and you've been in a variety of different mental spaces, but then as soon as you come off, you just can't remember. That shows that you're in a variety of different trance states.
Yeah.
And trance states are easy to get into.
Naturally.
You're probably in one right now,
Yes.
where as soon as we leave here, you won't remember everything that we've said.
No, of course.
But if anything you're concentrating on, your brain is in a sort of different mode, as it were. It's not that well understood, but the effects are. Like, hypnotism is one way that this is abused. You know, it's you can put some. If you go back to sort of indigenous cultures and stuff where they do mask work, you know, maybe they do this stuff in Steiner schools. I'm guessing that they might do something similar. It's like sort of basic drama improv theory. But anyway, we're now getting super nerdy about improv theory.
That's
but
true. That's true.
Losing all the audience. It's probably a traffic report.
And here's the traffic. But you mentioned one or two things in there, which I think are actually just, you know, you're in this sort of state where the twitching becomes automatic. Does that mean you actually lie in bed, wake up at night, finding yourself twitching? And
I have often dreamt about new methodologies that I could use in my rig, or about ideas for the technical setup, or I'm doing a gig, you know. And
are you nervous when you go on?
Depends what you mean. No, I don't.
Are you concerned that it might not come out well?
I mean, I don't get stage fright, if that's what you mean.
Sort of.
But nerves, as you might call it, is just an abundance of adrenaline in your bloodstream.
Which, of course, can be positive.
Yeah, exactly.
Or necessary.
If you're
even.
not afraid of what, if you're, unless you're freaking out about what you're about to do, a bit of adrenaline is really helpful. And if you feel a bit jittery, you can literally shake it off. You just use the muscles and they use up the adrenaline.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, obviously some tasks are more daunting than others. And if I feel underprepared for something, like if it's like a TV thing and you've only got 5 minutes and it needs to be good, that can be very daunting. Because then, especially if you're improvising.
Yeah. And especially if it's live.
Exactly, if it's literally 5
Live,
minutes,
5 minutes.
then there is pressure. But like for something like this, where the crowd's going to be up for a party and up for a bit of looseness and up for
Why would you?
more
You're gonna
forgiving.
join the party.
Exactly, and it's just and you can, if you do something that wasn't exactly what you were planning, you can just stop and say that's not what I meant, and everyone laughs, and then you just carry on. In fact, I do sort of comedy shows as well where there's a lot of that, where like if I make a mistake, then it becomes really fortuitous because often that's really funny that I've made a mistake. So like
Music.
Give
me some music.
Let's spin everyone out. This is a track by Aphex Twin called Funny Little Man, and it's gonna weird up your Sunday.
I like it. What are your kids going to think of you?
I don't know. Next question.
No, come on.
I don't know, do I?
Here's, I've got this crazy dad who does these funny things.
I don't know.
That'd be cool, don't you think? Don't you think they'll like
I guess
it?
so. I don't know.
What are your thoughts for them?
I've tried not to teach my kid too many beatbox things, lest I raise another freak like myself. And I mean, I don't know. I've got this thing where I think that I want my kid to want to be whatever he wants to be.
Sure.
I don't want to mold him in any. I want him to want to be better than me at everything. I don't.
Every parent wants that, really, don't they?
Well, yeah.
Ideally, anyway.
Yeah, but I don't want him to like look up to me, being like, "Oh, you're so great," because I'm all right.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many role models you could have. Obviously, like it's the best feeling when your kid looks up to you and respects you and stuff. But like, I'm pretty sure he'll learn fairly early on that I'm a deeply flawed and strange human being. But I think so. I want to kind of introduce him to that gradually over time, rather than letting him find out when he hits puberty and he's like, blah, 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 "What the fuck, Dad? You're really weird. You've made me weird as well." So I think but when they're really young, you've got to.
My daughter endlessly tells me I'm mad.
Well, you probably are. But when they're really young, you've got to let them think that you are infallible, so that they like listen to you when you tell them not to stick metal things in plug sockets and stuff. But I really over time I'll be like, I don't know. I never want to say I never want to say because I said so. I always want to give them a reason for shit.
Is there anything you know now that you desperately want to do that you haven't done?
Oh fuck, loads. Too much to. My general bucket list. Yeah, I don't know.
I meant in the professional field rather than do you want to
Right,
go
professional.
jumping in
Yeah.
Where is this going to take you? That's the point. What's the next step?
Well, so in terms of like the software that I've had made for me to do what I want to do, it's only just got to the point where it is in a reasonable enough state that it does all the things that I wanted it to do.
Right.
And I've just started to make use of it. So the album that I just did, Distractions, was a distraction from making the system that I now use live, because I wasn't satisfied with all this hardware I was taking out, because it couldn't do what I wanted to do. So I couldn't do the shows that I wanted to do. So I designed this thing. I had it made for me, extensively tested it, and now I've learned how to use it. So as I say, like. So
there's always going to be technical additions, advances, and new things anyway. Be it software or hardware.
At this point, I'm way less focused on making new advanced technologies like I was, 3 years ago when I started this project in earnest. And I'm more interested in what I can do with it now, and about using what I now have as a live tool to do stuff that you can't do in other ways. Just use it intuitively.
The tool that, as I see you use it, your foot pedals and so on are a musical instrument, really, to you.
Mm.
It's like, and you're very precise with it. You have this amazing ability to know the timing of what you've repeated and exactly where it will appear and the pitch.
Well, a lot of that's automatic. So actually, rather than like, you know, rehearsing a specific set,
Yeah.
I tend to revise a set of guidelines,
Okay.
which I've sort of honed over time, which I won't divulge, but they're basically ways that I have of making a set be engaging from start to finish, and
Yep.
it's a whole bunch of instructions. It's almost like an algorithm for doing a set. Whereas like a DJ,
Which you
will-
have to obey as well. No,
no,
mind the kids.
no, exactly.
You have to follow the rules.
Oh no! I mean for me,
It's very structured.
it's
in a way.
yeah. There is structure
Yeah.
in terms of the methodology that I employ to
Yeah.
make sure that the gig itself is engaging from start to finish,
Mm.
and that includes there being, you know, textural differences, emotional depth, things about kind of performance technique and sort of improv theory and the musicality itself, ways of using the machine, stuff like this. And they're just, you know, it's been trial and error. So to the point where now I have this list of do's and don'ts. And it's also been about finding the exact sort of tone for the specific show that it is.
Yes. And the venue obviously has an effect on the quality of what you can do.
Yeah, and the people that are there. And
Yeah.
like last week, I did a reggae festival in Slovakia, and it's the biggest reggae festival in Eastern Europe. And everyone but me was doing reggae or you know, dancehall or something. And so I decided to be a sound system that day, and I basically just did what I would want to hear from an act at that festival. Like I did my idealized version of what I would want from an act at that festival if I was in the crowd.
Yeah.
So that was very different from what I might have done at, say, like a techno club, where there I would do mostly techno, or at a comedy gig where I do all sorts. So like, yeah, what was the question?
Exactly. I've completely forgotten. You know,
Who
where are you
knows?
going in the future?
Oh, where am I going in the future?
It's okay.
Home, eventually,
Indeed.
at some point.
I think we've pretty much got to the end. I'm really grateful that you're going to let us use some pieces from the show so people can see the kind of stuff you do. And I wish you a great show.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to have an opportunity to chat and have this kind of crazy conversation, which is nice that it's completely off the wall and it's not planned and we don't know quite what we're doing any more than your act is, except I expect your act is much more entertaining. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Cheers.
Take care.
Don't forget, the name is Beardyman.
So I'm fucking Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that is insane. Say Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that is insane. Say Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that is insane. Say Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that is insane. Say Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that is insane. Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that. Beardyman, and that's my name. I do shit that. Maribor. Are you ready to fucking dance, 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 What do you want more of that shit? Thanks, bye.